Okay, thank you, Uwe. So now it is time to discuss DDS in AutoSAR Foundation, the classic platform, and the adaptive platform. So let's dive into that. But before, let's review quickly what we consider a modern SDV architecture in AutoSAR, and let's look a little bit into what the software perspective to that will be and what role DDS plays into all of that. So from a platform perspective, normally features are observed from a point of view of either microprocessor-oriented features or microcontroller-oriented features. And within that, we always are obliged to make a choice of operating system. So microprocessors will normally take us to a POSIX-like operating system. Then microcontrollers will make us look at something more like an OSEC-like operating system. And we begin to see a very clear divide here. And with those choices already made in our system, it is time to consider the connectivity framework. So from this perspective, we have three main choices. We can look for service-oriented kind of communication, which is enabled by ARACOM from the AutoSAR adaptive platform, or on the opposite side to that, signal-oriented communication, which we all know is very well enabled by the RTE in AutoSAR Classic. But we have something in between all of that, which is a data-oriented communication framework, like for instance DDS from the object management group, which is neither service nor signal-oriented, but something else in the middle, which we call data-oriented. And we will see more details about this in the next few slides. But first, I would like to describe a brief history of DDS in AutoSAR. It all started with incorporation to the adaptive platform in release 1811, or 1803, sorry. And that was the DDS network binding, which was followed by a swift concept validation. And then it received a few improvements like service discovery enhancements, security-oriented technical report. Then there were two releases which were geared towards bug fixing and minor improvements. And then finally in release 24-11, we are seeing a new major improvement in terms of safety enhancements. When it comes to the classic platform, we didn't exactly stop in release 22.11. We actually started incorporating DDS into the classic platform through the DDS basic software module, which was quickly improved in release 23.11 with a system template set of changes that enabled system-level modeling of DDS systems. And this year, we have actually validated the first part of this, so the DDS basic software middleware module, sorry. And then when we look at the foundation package, this year we have also incorporated a set of DDS protocols, which I will describe in the next few slides. So this takes us to the present moment. What is the status of DDS in AutoSAR from a functional perspective? If we look at the classic platform in isolation, we see that data-oriented communication is already well supported and even validated. And when it comes to service-oriented communication, we see that we are still in development for that part, and we will probably see some very tangible results in release 25.11. Now, when it comes to the adaptive platform, we don't have, let's say, direct API level support for data-oriented communication, but we do have service-oriented communication enabled through the DDS network binding of SVS communication management and of course the ARACOM APIs. Then when it comes to the foundation package, we are still missing one document in there describing service-oriented or data-oriented communication. But we see that for service-oriented communication, we have already covered a number of requirements and PRS documents that very well enable service-oriented communication for classic, adaptive, and other platforms outside of the AutoSAR ecosystem. So for these two elements that we are still missing, namely data-oriented communication in the adaptive platform, we are already considering a sub-network binding of the signal-based network binding under AP SWS communication management. And in Foundation, there will probably be another document that underpins or cements this particular enhancement. So all of these are, let's say, gaps in the specifications that we are still planning to resolve in the future. So back to release 24.11, let's see what's new. And we are going to start with concept 7.2, DDS protocols in Foundation. This new concept shifts a little bit the idea of DDS in AutoSAR and we consider DDS API, type, and QoS interactions as protocol. And because of this, we have extracted the DDS service-oriented protocols define AP SWS communication management for things like service instance discovery and service instance communication into a set of documents at the foundation package, namely FO PRS DDS Service Discovery Protocol and FO PRS DDS Communication Protocol. So now the spec items in both AP and foundation look like I'm depicting here. So before all of this in AP, you will have these big requirements that kind of intertwine application layer APIs from Aracom with DDS specific API interactions. And now that very same spec item from the adaptive platform looks like what we have on the right side. Just a brief description and a reference to a FO PRS DDS spec item. And from that, we have taken most of the content down to the foundation package, where now we have a very, let's say, platform independent, platform agnostic implementation of the same requirement that can be reused both from the adaptive platform and the classic platform. So now we can see that adaptive platform relies on foundation for its DDS protocols, same for the classic platform, and even other platforms from AUTOSAR that may come in the distant future, or other platforms outside of AUTOSAR might benefit from these DDS-oriented protocols in a very reliable and, let's say, non-repeating fashion. Okay, so continuing with new features for DDS in this release 24.11, we have AR85884 and AR117431. And these two changes together, I have, let's say, informally titled end-to-end extensions in Aracom and DDS. So the goal of this set of changes is to bring safety and end-to-end protection feature support in DDS to adaptive applications. Things like deadline monitoring, QoS mismatch reporting, endpoint liveliness monitoring, sample rejection reporting, and loss reporting. And we have achieved this goal through extension of the DDS network binding with mappings to existing Aracom E2E types and APIs. But not only that, but we have also extended the Aracom APIs themselves with new end-to-end protection fault condition reporting APIs for things like proxy events, triggers, and field notifiers, and skeleton methods, and field getters and setters. And finally, we have also extended the DDS network binding with mappings to new APIs for those. So as you can see, this is a great improvement towards functional safety to be implemented not only on some IP deployments, but also on DDS deployments. Okay, so moving along, we are now going back to the classic platform and to concept 707, DDS in classic platform validation. This concept, its goal has been to validate release 23.11 specification items for DDS on classic platform by both implementation and review. And we see that three different use cases have been considered here. So intercommunication between CP and AP nodes, and CP and CP nodes, reception of DDS data by CP node at different rates, and support for safety QoS mechanisms at the different CP nodes. So the architecture of this validation looks like something like what I'm showing here, with an Ethernet switch in between, a computer, a test computer, and a couple of AP or CP nodes. And that's for use case 1 and 2, and use case 3 is a bit more complicated with a number of classic platform publishers and subscribers. Okay, so by the way, this has been accomplished by a company named Avin Systems with support from both Huawei and RTI. This brings a significant set of enhancements in classic platform AWS data distribution service, so better communication requirements, better constraints, and better properties and description of configuration items, along with sequence diagrams. This also brings improved quality of requirements for DDS on the classic platform, and it ensures that requirements are implementables, unambiguous, and understandable. So moving along, now it's time to look at the future of DDS in AUTOSAR, and particularly towards release 25.11, which will be next year. In terms of classic platform, the goal is to implement part 2 of the 707 DDS in classic platform concept, that is service-oriented architecture with DDS, or briefly calling it SOA, and of course dynamic discovery of DDS as well, which will be part 4 of the concept 707. All of this is led by Huawei, but there is a number of other companies such as RTI, Bosch, Vector, LG, iSoft, and Rich Auto, which join weekly meetings in development of these new concept parts. So Mondays is the Chinese language meeting, and Tuesdays we have the English-based meeting. Another goal that we have in the classic platform for this year with regards to DDS is to review the DDS relationship with other modules in the classic platform, like COM, LDCOM, and the RTE itself. Finally, of course, there will be improvements and bug fixes for DDS all across the board, like in every AUTOSAR release. And then finally, looking at release 26.11 and beyond, the idea is to keep developing concept 707, DDS in classic platform, with things like DDS control APIs and intra-ECU communication mechanisms like share memory and other IPC features of modern microcontrollers. When it comes to DDS protocols in Foundation, we might be looking at things like data-oriented communication in adaptive platform, data-oriented communication in Foundation, of course, to support all of that. And all of this will be targeting to close all the gaps when it comes to different communication paradigms across different AUTOSAR platforms. This will be tied, of course, by a number of, or just one DDS explanatory documents, DDS security-oriented documents. And this takes me to the end of this presentation, which I would like to use to deliver a big thank you to all the companies and individuals supporting DDS in AUTOSAR, either with concept development, concept support, reviews, criticism, ideas. All of that is very much welcome from me personally and from the AUTOSAR DDS working group. Please come join us every week on our IVC AP or IVC CP meetings, on the weekly IVC DDS meetings, whether that is Chinese or English language, and finally on the face-to-face meetings and the all working groups meetings. All right, so I would like to thank you all for your attention. If you have any questions, please stay with us. After the main event, there will be a QA session where you can ask for your questions directly to me.